Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. You have loved our next guest in Ray Donovan, Joker, Law & Order, Please Give, Scream 3, Maniac. Basically, if you've ever watched a movie or a TV show, chances are he's been in it. Now you can see Josh Pais in Edward Norton's neo-noir, Motherless Brooklyn. Let's take a look. Please welcome the great Josh Pais. Let's hear it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. I'm such a big fan of your work.
Oh, thank you.
As I was saying in the green room, whenever you appear in something, it immediately gets better.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you know that.
So are we going to make this show better? Am I making the show better?
It's getting better right now.
I feel it. All right, good.
But you know that the director has an eye for talent, or that the casting person has an eye for talent. You know that just like somebody is paying attention to movies and TV shows and knows who the good people in them are. That's how I always feel when you show up in a project.
Oh, that's really nice.
You got a number of things here to talk about. Let's get to all of them. But I'm curious, how did you start acting?
Well, I grew up in the East Village, and how I really started was in my living room. There was performance art, and people would come. There'd be about 40 people would come every other weekend. And
your parents artists?
My mom was a painter and a poet, and my dad was a theoretical physicist who worked with Einstein, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. And what did they have, like, I think, were they called, like, happenings?
Yeah, they were.
Really?
They were like happenings. Like, people would come. There was, like, a cab driver that would come, and he would do, like, the same thing every time. Like, he'd do Waiting for Godot. He'd put a hat on, take his hat off, and play two characters. And that was always where people would kind of get up and get some wine or whatever.
That was when people were like, we can either leave.
Yeah, this would be like intermission.
Right.
This guy Billy would come by,
And you would perform as well?
And I would perform as well. Yeah.
What would you perform?
I would do this thing to. We would play this Bob Dylan song called "Dear Landlord," and I did this thing with my mom where I was kicking her out of the house.
How old?
9.
So you were 9 years old playing the landlord in Dear Landlord?
Yeah.
Was there any sense that you were a performer and that you would be doing something?
No, this was just fun.
It was just because it was happening.
I wasn't even thinking I want to be an actor. It was like, oh, let's create. What are we going to do this week? And yeah, so that's how it started.
And when did the I'm going to be an actor thing kick in?
Well, I was really into animal behavior, and my dad, because he was a scientist, was able to hook me up with different leading animal behaviorists to assist them in experiments. Wow. And I loved that, but I was like, I can't live in a lab, and my other passion was acting, and so I really feel like I've integrated the two because acting really is animal behavior as far as I'm concerned.
It's a version of animal behavior.
It is.
I mean, it's also well, humans are animals, and you're studying often
and it's
their
like
behavior.
The hierarchy and how that affects behavior and
body language.
And if the character feels safe in the space, and how does that, or if they want to dominate the space, like it's all behavior, and that's really the exciting element to me, is to find the behavior so that I can be spontaneous and don't have to think.
Did you find that? Did you recognize later on that it was associated with animal behavior, that the two were associated, or did you know fairly early?
Later on, it was like, oh, this all makes sense. My life has meaning.
Do you find that other actors approach the craft that way? Maybe they don't say animal behavior or had an interest in animal behavior growing up, but do you find that most other actors approach the craft that way?
I think the good actors do, and or actors that I like watching something that's very spontaneous, that's very real, and that is, it's a physical art form because you're looking at the body and the being. And so for me to watch, like working with Joaquin Phoenix and Joker or Edward Norton, like they're in their body. And that's compelling for me to watch because then something real is happening. What's not interesting, I think, for any audience is when an actor has a preset idea, like this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it because it feels safe. But it's really, the art form requires stepping into the unknown, like stepping in and like I'm going to be fully in it and not knowing where it's going to go. But if you've made choices that activate your body, then you can.
What kind of choices are those that activate your body?
Well, for example,
We should say you teach. This is like a technique and some that you teach, right?
yeah, it's an approach. Yeah, I call it. It's committed impulse is the name of what I teach. I mean, just on one level, and everybody, you guys can all just do this. Is just notice like what's your connection to the ground right now. Like some people are very rooted. Typically people that work in nature, work in fields, and are more live in nature, they're rooted. You can tell as they walk, they're rooted into the ground. Midtown Manhattan here, like people are like energetically skirting above the ground, and just by playing with that, it alters the energy in your body, and you just allow that to trigger your imagination so that you can just step in and play.
Do you start with the walk or how they're connected to the ground when it comes to one of your performances?
I start somehow physically, like how can I, and it might be, it's not necessarily the walk, but just playing with being like very rooted, like even if you're sitting, like if I try to root down right now, I feel like I'm slowed down, like I can be here, and if I like lift the energy up, it's like I feel more anxious and more scattered and more frenetic.
Well, when it comes to your character in Motherless Brooklyn, you are, for all intents and purposes, a henchman, if you will. I mean, it turns into a bit more of that.
Right.
But initially, when we meet you, you are a goon, a henchman.
Right.
What was your approach to that character and that type of person in terms of the physicality?
I mean, that is a guy who's, as the story unfolds, you realize he's so involved in everyone's business.
Right. He's kind of playing the cards.
And so, in a sense, he wants to be invisible, but energetically, like he's involved in everybody's. And so just playing, there's something called a kinesphere, which is also people have a certain amount of energy that, like some people, like they'll enter a room and it's almost like a black hole. And then some people, like they'll enter and energy is just emanating out from them. And that's something you can easily play around with. And so it was a combination of trying to be invisible, but also letting the energy spread out. So he's like involved.
Kind of see that with the way that you sort of look at the room. Like I think of a moment where you exit Moses Randolph's office to see Edward Norton for the first time, who's visiting the office there.
Right.
And you kind of clock the room, clock him, and then move on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that it's just whatever I can so that I'm out of my head and that I can play.
But what's so interesting is that this goes back to, having an idea for a scene and then trying to use it, and that never works. But we're talking about having lots of ideas for a character.
Well, it's about having an intellectual idea, and then how can you convert that to spontaneous, organic behavior.
Right.
So you want to, you have ideas about the character, but you can't just play the ideas. You've got to convert it into your body. So
and this goes back to Joaquin as well, who when we watch Joker or The Master or something, there's a lot of ideas when it comes to the physicality of the character, but he's also known for being wildly present in every take.
Absolutely. That's a perfect example. He just, working with him, there was no chit chat. Like he was in it, he was in it and just so in his body. Like his performance is so incredibly physical and beautiful in a way, even though he's somewhat tormented. There is a beauty in his.
So there's a dancer. I mean, not just because he's dancing in it, but there is like a dance element to everything that he's doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so he just would activate, I don't know exactly, but get so into that physical choice, and it would just take over his being.
Right. I remember reading hearing an interview a couple years ago with John C. Reilly, who had just worked with Joaquin on The Sisters Brothers, and he had said that he would try to talk to Joaquin about the scene and what they're going to do, and Joaquin would be like, "Do not talk to me about the scene. Just do whatever it is you're going to do.
Right.
I don't want to know anything beforehand."
Yeah. I mean, similarly for me, if I have any mantra before I shoot a scene, it's I don't know what's going to happen.
Does that mean that you don't like to rehearse?
No, I like to rehearse, but each rehearsal should be open. You don't want to rehearse to lock it down.
Right.
You want to rehearse like what's happening in this rehearsal, what's happening in this rehearsal, so that when you're actually filming, it still has that, well, what's happening right now. And because nobody wants to see something locked and a lockdown performance, even if it makes sense.
Well, because the best part of watching a performance, be it on stage or in a movie or on a concert stage, is the question of what are they going to do next?
Yeah,
what is this person
exactly.
going to do?
Yeah.
You know, something feels unhinged. That's why we love Joaquin Phoenix,
Totally.
because we have no idea what he's going to do next.
Yep, exactly.
Is that hard to play off of for an actor, or is that something that you just look forward? It's like the gift.
You mean like Joaquin, for example?
Yeah, or even
No.
like Ben Mendelsohn in The Land of Steady Habits, which I watched recently, who is also a kind of nervy actor who it feels like gives something different every take.
Yeah. No, for me, that's the best. You know, I would say early on, I remember doing a play not far from here at CSC. And
Great coffee shop too.
yeah, true. And I was working with an actor, and we would rehearse, and he would, you know, this was earlier on in my process, and okay, we would have the scene, and then we go the next day rehearsal, and he was doing something completely different, and then after rehearsal, I was like, you changed it, you know, and because I at that point wanted some security, and he was like, that's how I work, and I was it was very distressing to me at that time. But now, you know, I see like the brilliance in the way he was working, and just attempt constantly to just be open to what's happening in this moment, because people come to see a performance or a movie to get out of their life.
Yeah.
You know, they want to transport into something different than their life. And if an actor is like locked in on their performance, like have it all locked down, it puts the audience into their head and they go back to their life. But if there's that spontaneity, like you said, with Joaquin, for example, and I attempt
Or with
to do
you
that,
as well, I think,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
especially in those scenes with Joaquin and Joker. I don't think anyone's ever seen you play a kind of sleazy 1970s clown shop owner.
Yeah, well, maybe that's going to be my new niche.
Clown shop owner?
Yeah, clown shop, yeah.
When did you, I mean, you talk about early on in your career, this moment where you were with another actor who kind of was being very spontaneous and you didn't really know how to deal with it. When did you recognize that that's how you wanted to perform, that that was the most optimal way for you to perform?
I was doing a play on Broadway called I'm Not Rappaport with Judd Hirsch and Cleavon Little. Amazing play. It won the Tony Award, and I had a relatively small part in it. But I would come on stage, and every night, those guys were just so in it. And every night, they would give me something different, and they just taught me, in a sense. It was like a master class, and I did the play for 2 years.
With different casts, or was the same cast?
Mostly with them, and then Jack Klugman came in and did it as well with Ossie Davis, which was also amazing. But they just kept, in a sense, throwing me off, and they were having fun with that I then was like, wow, this is amazing if I just let go of my lockdown and just get into it. And so that was the first time I was really like relished in the unknown.
When did you start teaching?
I started teaching probably 25 years ago, on and off. Yeah. And really it's been a laboratory. After I got out of college, I went on a journey into how can I count on spontaneity? And I just trained with people from all over the world that were leading actors and experimenting with that way with how can you get spontaneous so that it's not something that's just fleeting. And from that, people started asking me to teach, and I was like, I'm not a teacher, but you know, NYU asked me to teach. I was like, all right, and and then from there, you know, it's just been an ongoing experiment of how to get people present by just connecting to their body, connecting to their breath, connecting to their immediate environment. And in my class, as soon as you're aware that you check out, like as soon as you're aware like you'll be here and then you're like, what am I going to do later? Or how is it going? Or do they like me? Or whatever, to say out loud, I'm back. Right. And so just to keep training yourself just to come back, because our mind is always going to want to drift us away.
What about when you're doing something, you're doing a scene in a movie that requires you to recreate almost an exact thing that you did in the previous take? You know, like say there was a hair in the gate, and so therefore they couldn't use that take, but they want you to basically do the exact same thing that you did in that previous take.
Well, the key thing in film that they want is, you know, if you say a certain line and you pick up the coffee cup, that has to be the same. Exactly. But from my point of view, like the actor's job is like in the experience of picking this up, like what is the actual thing that's happening, so that it's I feel like this is ridiculous, but no, but it's really
Josh, you took yourself out. Stay in.
Right.
Stay
I'm back. But it's really like what's happening as you lift this, because it is a different moment, and in this moment has never happened before. Right. You know, in truth, like our mind goes like, oh, this already happened, or I've already picked up the, you know. So it's like keeping it so that it's unknown. But you have to hit certain marks, you know, so it's what people, when they say that was great, do that again, what they're responding to is that something spontaneous and real was happening.
And there's almost no way to recreate it exactly. So if you have to pick up the mug a second time, if you let go of the idea that it has to be the exact same, you are going to do something, you are going to pick up the mug, and it's just going to feel different for you.
Yeah.
Right? Am I getting it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, totally. No, I'm back. I just was like, wow, we're talking about.
I started talking and you zoned out. Okay, great.
Yeah. Say I'm back. I'm going to have some water. Everybody say I'm back. Let's all say I'm back.
I'm back.
I'm back. Okay, cool.
You are also a part of a show that I cannot wait to see, Mrs. Fletcher with the great Catherine Hahn. Can you talk about the part that you play in that show and what it's like working with Catherine?
Well, my part, I play a guy it runs a dive bar, very meat and potatoes, somewhat shut down guy going through life, and he's gotten himself into this class. It's a writing class, and it's all about like expressing yourself and opening up, and he has no idea what that is. And the teacher is a trans woman, and it's somebody that he's never experienced, you know, anybody that's trans, and so it's like how do I deal with all this? How do I deal with what I'm experiencing? And so it's kind of a guy that's shut down, that's trying to open up, but it's such a foreign notion to him. And so that's the fun of it for me. And working with Catherine, I mean, again, she's somebody who every take you don't know where she's going to go. And for me, that's the most delicious thing. But she's just like in it. It'll go here, it'll go there. She's so present and so playful and a joy to work with.
Yeah, she's always been one of those actors, even in her early comedy work, where there was that mystery of like, what is this person doing on screen right now? What is that face up to? This is so crazy.
Yeah, and she doesn't know. You know, she's willing, you know. I think that's the theme of our talk today, is like stepping into the unknown.
Do you feel like every time you get to set or start doing a play, you step into the unknown? Or are you ever faced with the fact that you've signed on to a project, be it a play or a movie? A play would be bad, I'm assuming, because those go on a long time, where the unknown is not being created for you.
I have to bring that.
You have to bring it.
Yeah, because it's you know, pretty much if you told a producer, hey, I don't know what I'm gonna do, you know, and I'm just gonna step into the unknown, you know, that could create
right.
You know, some.
Does that mean that you're not gonna step into the light, Josh? What does that mean?
Right. Okay, this is what I'm feeling. Yeah. What's up? Yeah. No, you have.
There are some actors who do that, though, right? I mean, there are actors. I think not to go back to Joaquin, but Joaquin is one of them who is somewhat known to be like, at times, like, I actually think it would feel more real if I'm over here. And people
Right.
kind of have to adjust to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to just bring that. And I think that's, if there's any reason that that I keep working, it's because, that's my passion and that's what I commit to is to let it unfold in this moment to the best of my ability. And sometimes I go in my head, but then it's like, come back, bring it back.
How much of this has to do with, you talked about breath and being present and coming back. How much of this has to do with meditation? Are you are you a proponent of meditation in any way? Or do you find it through performing?
I do meditate, and I think one of the biggest obstacles for actors and really everybody is that we've been, I'm going to go a little deep here or out there, but we've been it's enculturated in our society that there are good sensations and bad sensations. Like being happy is good, being anxious is bad. Right. That's delivered constantly.
It only furthers the anxiousness.
Yeah, but the truth is, we're atoms, and emotions are just different vibrations in our body. Mm-hmm. And if we let go of that anxious, typically when people feel anxious, it's like a lot of energy up here. But if you just actually feel that energy and not put it like it's good or bad, like then it opens everything up. Then it's like, yeah, sometimes the energy is intense and sometimes it's really smooth. Right. And so it's a question of like feeling that energy rather than working against it. Yeah.
Or trying to stop it. And that has to do with that enculturated kind of like, this is a good energy or a bad energy. Right. It could just be energy.
And it is energy because we're just atoms, like our body's atoms. But if we try to get rid of what we're feeling, like by kind of suppressing it, then our attention goes into our head. Yeah. And then it always ends up with some version of I suck. Mm-hmm. But if we can stay with this energy and play with it because it's there, that's humans just vibrate. That's the bottom line. And who's to say it's good or bad? But if we can just play with this energy, and sometimes it is intense and have to just welcome it, then we can, that's the healthiest way to live. And
animal behavior again.
Animal behavior, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, animals are just like,
no anxiousness whatsoever.
Yeah, they're not. Hey. They're not like, oh God, today didn't go so good. Yeah. They're just like,
food. What's up?
What's up?
We have time for a couple questions. Who has a question?
Hi. Thanks so much for coming in. With a process that hinges so much on spontaneity and kind of being able to be improvisational, how do you bring that into an audition setting where the temptation, I guess, is to show them, all the ideas that you have from beforehand,
right?
In sometimes one take.
Well, I've tried so many times to go into an audition with I've got this, and that has never gotten me a job. I've only gotten jobs when I was in my body, breathing, and it feels like because it's an audition, because the stakes are high, because you want it, that you want to come in and do your thing. And you do want to do your thing, but it's gotta, every job that I've gotten is because I had a little bit of this unknown, or I was breathing, I was connected to the fluctuation in my body. And I wish, there are times where I wish I didn't have to go there because it takes bravery to step into that unknown space, but that's what people respond to in this era. In this time that we're in, people want truth. They don't want manipulation. And that, we don't want that in politics, we don't want that in relationships, and we don't want it in acting. We don't want to see it.
Do you find that, and this might just be another idea before going into doing a scene, but do you find that underplaying and trying not to play anything but yourself at times when you're going into an audition or even into a scene helps you stay present and in the
It depends on the material. Like if it's very naturalistic,
Right.
then it's like, yeah, I'll work from me. But if it's like, like if I'm doing, Motherless Brooklyn or Joker or something like that, then I have to alter my being, but
the
then I
very
have
least
to
because
tell
there's
the
an
truth
accent.
about that alteration.
Right.
Yeah.
One more.
Hi.
Hey.
You were speaking about how physicality often really informs your take on a character. And I was just wondering, once you have that determined, what's your process of getting in and out of that when moving on set and back to set?
Well, I'll train in a sense and these are called inner atomics in the committed impulse classes that I teach. And so I have them very accessible to me. For example, sometimes it's like almost like having like a continuous like fluid energy where somebody that's kind of just like flows through life. And I can just kind of get that in my body and then see where that takes me. So it's just having training to get these physical choices easily accessible without locking. It's all about how to get out of here, because this is very limited, and our creativity is in our body. So it's how can we get in here?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that has to do with writing as well. Finding a flow is getting out of here and just being in your body.
Any creative act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Josh, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
Thank you so
I
much
really
for being
enjoyed
here.
this.
Motherless Brooklyn comes out November 1st in theaters. Mrs. Fletcher premieres on HBO. Is it next week or the week after?
Yeah.
Anything?
Next week. I think it's the 27th, I think.
27th?
Yeah.
Okay. Joker is in theaters now. Doesn't
Yep.
really need anybody promoting it anymore. It's doing
Right.
just fine.
Doing pretty good.
And
Ray Donovan opens, the 7th season starts in mid-November.
Amazing. Josh Pais, everybody. Let's hear it.
Thank you.